But yeah, thanks everybody for being here. My name is Zachoma Smith. You guys can call me Z. Yeah, thank you. Member of the Illinois Green Party, organizer here based in Chicago. My background a little bit, I'm an engineer full time. I was running from work to come here and do my lunch break. So thank you guys for bearing with me for being a little late. And also as a member of the Illinois Green Party, with some of my comrades here in the back, as well as Chicago DSA, as well as some other organizations in Chicago. So really my whole thing is like I've been called like the diplomat. My whole thing is like lefty unity and breaking down a lot of these silos and working together as different cross organizations. So today, my topic here today is really called Project Matcha. A nice little fun way to like remix the negative of Project 2025 because Matcha One is one of my favorite drinks. It's green, it's very strong, and if you want to have an alternative to coffee, matcha is a very great example of that. There's a lot of caffeine, very strong, very small, but very potent. And I believe that's what we are here in the room and all nationwide in the Green Party. That we're a very vibrant, strong organization. And this path for us to be stronger, and more powerful to really have a positive impact country. So yeah, so my presentation style is very interactive. So any questions you guys have, raise your hand as well as in the chat and Zoom. So definitely feel free to stop me anytime. Like I said, I definitely want to make sure that we have an interactive session for the next hour, hour plus. So really, the overview is very simple. What exactly is the thesis of Project Matcha? Identifying local issues that we can all solve together, as well as looking at where to win, what location can we be? Because there's a lot of us, there's also not a lot of us. We want to stretch ourselves too thin. We want to maximize or minimize our capacity. We want to make sure we're working efficiently, working smart, so we can really be effective to grow this organization. And then at the very end, we want to work together, have some little breakout sessions, have goals, as well as a final wrap up for Q&A. Sounds good? Everyone's excited? Friday in Chicago. All right, perfect. So a little background again. You see some familiar faces in here. So again, this is going kind of my bona fides, a lack of a better term. Like why am I up here? What is my organizing history? So these two pictures here are some of my events and activities I've been doing in Chicago the last few years. So really, I said, a member of the Green Party, member of Chicago DSA, and then also helped co-found a Solidarity Now collective, which is like a left unity group that has a lot of different comrades in Chicago, New York, Minnesota, Wisconsin, as well as Seattle. We're just trying to share knowledge of like how to organize for the labor, for environmental justice, AI, things like that. So really, like I said, what you see in these pictures is the far left side is myself, Byron Cedro Lopez. For those in Chicago who know about local politics, he's the alderman, our city council member from the 25th Ward, which is the Pilsen, a heavy Hispanic neighborhood. To his right is a comrade from his district, as well as the co-chair of Chicago DSA and the campaign manager slash the leaders of Chicago PSL. So in this picture here, which was a few months ago, it's really showing you the left unity that we're trying to foster here in Chicago as a really good litmus test, as well as a template for the rest of the country of coming together. Because one of the reasons why this partnership came together in the last 7 months is because Byron, as a city council member, wanted to run for Congress, but the Chicago Democrat machine basically was very corrupt and very kicked off a lot of people off the ballot. So for those that don't know, Chuy Garcia is a lifelong Democrat. He's been in Chicago politics in the 80s. He had a quiet retirement in November of last year, and the only person that knew he was retiring and leaving his congressional seat was his chief of staff. And the same day, surprisingly, she somehow was the only person in the whole city that registered to be in the Democratic primary. So basically, they disenfranchised the entire district of 750,000 people. And Byron, the city council member of that neighborhood, he mounted an independent campaign to run against her. So the coalition that we created was the Chicago DSA, Chicago PSL, and the Illinois Green Party to work together to help get them to the ballot to get some signatures. Because those that don't know, Chicago and Illinois has some of the hardest ballot laws in the whole state. I mean, so for instance, the Democratic Party, you only need 650 signatures to get on the ballot. You can basically do that in one day, right? You go to a couple grocery stores, a couple train stops, you can get that one day. Whereas independent candidate needs 10,000 official, but they accept up to 20,000. So that means you need almost 15 times the amount of signatures that the Democratic Party needs to be officially on the ballot. So Chicago DSA, PSL, and the Green Party helped Byron get over 17,000 signatures in a 2 month period. And then the Democratic Party, so Jamie Pritzker, Chuy Garcia, and Patty Garcia, they basically had contradicted ballots and went against them. And then from there, they chipped down at 17,000 to 9,000. We then sued, went back, got another 11,000 to add on to the list. They chipped that down back to 9,000. This past Monday, the state of Illinois kicked off Byron as well as another independent candidate off the ballot. So the Democratic Party machine in Illinois is very strong to keep off the ballot. But the key thing here is really about the lefty unity of like the dire, our backs against the wall, really created interesting bedfellows where Chicago ESA and ESL Green Party worked together the last 7 months. And now we're creating the coalition. We're continuing it as we're working this summer on next steps. We're actually having a new debrief on Sunday as far as what to do next and how to continue to work together because the rapid Chicago USA against USA overall is that they're tied to the Democratic Party. They saw firsthand that the Democratic Party and the duopoly is not their friend. And now they're working together with us, so and other left groups in Chicago, how to grow and how to continue this fight past this one election, continue to grow a true left solidarity movement in Chicago. And then the last picture in the bottom right is myself and Scott, you see there at the press conference. So we really provide a lot of material support to the campaign and really try to foster that unity. That kind of gives the background of like kind of my ethos and mindset to really showcase to the entire team here of like what we really need to grow and foster together, what kind of is behind Project Matcha. Oh, you can see me? Okay. Sorry about that. Yeah, so kind of the overview, like why now? What's the purpose of this? Really looking at it like everyone knows it here. I'm telling everybody, but there's growing disfaction amongst the two-party system. There's a really rising resentment, especially amongst millennials and Gen Z, of the two-party system doesn't represent them. I'm an older millennial, so I remember getting really into politics around like in college at 18, getting really excited for Obama. And then we saw from his first run to second run really disappointment. And then from there we saw I got really excited again into socialist politics from my bro from Obama to Bernie Sanders and saw the disappointment again, 2016, 2020. And now a lot of younger people that are Gen Z that are under 30 years old, they're really disaffected and checked out. You've seen some of the voting numbers nationwide. A lot of them just not even participating in electoralism. But we really need to capture that audience and really get them energized and motivated and let them know that there's other options outside of the two-party system. Younger voters are increasingly independent, as well as the success and wins the last 9 months with the DSA endorsed members in New York City, in Denver, as well as Georgia. We're seeing an increased excitement now for socialism and socialist policies. DSA and socialism overall, they're kind of get lumped together in polling. They're the most popular thing in politics right now in America. The Democratic Party's underwater, they're less popular than Trump. Trump's underwater, MAGA's underwater. But socialist politics overall as an umbrella, and also we go line by line, Green New Deal, universal health care, et cetera, are extremely popular. So we really need to capitalize on this and how to really get that young energy to work together to grow this movement. And again, to reiterate, any questions you guys have, stop me in real time. If anyone can interact with that. So really probably about the overview. It's really I look at this because like at my day job, I'm an engineer, so I kind of look at like a project manager of like what is like the market saying about our party, about the movement. And the biggest thing you always hear is that Greens aren't viable. You also hear that Greens only pop up every 4 years. You also hear that the third party vote is a protest vote, is a dead end. And you also hear we can work inside the Democratic Party. We can push them left. We can this lesser two evil. We've heard some version of this over the last few years. Of course, there's some comrades in here that have been organizing longer than myself that have seen this even longer and been fighting against that. So I think these are really the key things we want to fight against and really push back is like how do we dispel these misnomers, these propaganda, but also build trust in our communities so they actually believe us and work with us when we grow this together. Any quick feedback real quick on these four bullet points? Anything you guys hear as well as far as against the Greens, as far as in your neighborhoods? Scott?
Yeah, I was gonna say, I push all the time to get everybody in the Green Party, go to our candidates, social medias, like, comment, share, because like you said, we only show up every 4 years. Well, if, and do this from your personal account, if people see all of the candidates running all the time, it's gonna fight that narrative that we only show up every 4 years.
I also hear a lot that Greens or voting third party splits the vote, but I always counter with, if we were splitting the vote, the platform policies would be the same. So splitting the vote would require them to steal from us and then be campaigning on the same ideas. So
Whatever. Yeah, one more, right?
I was wondering, so with the mayor and Byron and everything, is there not a Green Party candidate for that position? Is it just Republican and Democrat on that, or is there still like, yeah, is there a Green Party candidate for that, or was he blocked off and it's only Republican and Democrat?
Yeah, so for that primary, so the question's about the congressional race for Illinois board. So right now, officially on the ballot is the Democrat, Patty Garcia.
Yeah.
She's officially on the ballot. And then there's one independent guy, Ed Hershey. He's under the party called Working Class Party. So the reason why he's on it, because the last election, he ran and got like, I believe, 5% of the vote, which automatically in Illinois gets going to the next ballot 4 years later or 2 years later.
Are you guys working with him? Oh, I'm sorry.
I've reached out to him. So this gets into really like deep, like socialist like ideology. His organization is kind of a Trotsky's organization, and they don't want to work with anything that's like they believe is capitalist leaning or friendly to capitalists. So their project wants to be totally independent from anything like a BSA or Green or anything like that.
I just comment, so Illinois, this was the year to try to get ballot access. So it's a once every 4 year process, we have to get 5% of the governor's race.
Okay.
We can do that with a number of statewide candidates, so that was our focus. So we did not get into all the congressional districts, because we were putting all of our effort into going to statewide and get ballot access. So we didn't have a candidate.
But
Yeah, and that
yeah, so the thing is, 5% in other statewide races will get gets Illinois like, ballot access, but only for statewide races. If you like 5% from kind of governor, then you get 5% like only for statewide races, but for president, governor's all that gets you, that gets you, everything.
goes all.
And I do also have a question from the Zoom room. Alex says, I'm curious about long-term strategy. Are we interested in building community and neighborhood assemblies for grassroots participatory democracy forums?
He's saying he's sharing.
Your camera?
Yeah.
Okay.
Let's see. It's good. So there we go.
Yeah.
And he's in the PowerPoint.
Yes, you can still share it out.
Okay, perfect.
There it goes.
Yeah, so I apologize for the color here, but those that can see, this is kind of a 5 year vision of kind of laying it out. I'll go through step by step. So year one is really just building the organization. So the key thing here that we have as far as is building the organization as far as getting volunteers and getting a political ideology. Like what is going to be your leaning in your district, whether it's your city, your suburb, your rural area. What is going to be the North Star that's going to drive your organization? And then year two is really coalition building. So this is really we expand out your footprint. So this is far as first year you're getting your 5, 10 volunteers that are really passionate. You're really focusing on we're gonna focus on data centers, we're gonna focus on ranked choice voting, we're gonna focus on campaign finance reform. These like real topics that can really galvanize multiple different coalitions to work together. And in year two, you're actually expanding out from down to the green part of you're actually working with your local community in cities, states, and rural areas to really look at as far as what other levels have a presence in the neighborhood, as well as how do you grow this to be a strong presence in real life as well as digital. Year three is kind of what I call like when you start flexing your muscles. This is kind of like a strength check. Where you're looking at, all right, you're taking an audit of we have now a chapter of 100 members that are dues paying, that we have weekly recurring meetings, we have quarterly reviews, we have different actions we participate, political education, we have protests we participate in. And then from there, you can take a true audit and say, are we ready for an election? Are we ready for an election at a municipal level, whether that's the county commissioner, whether that's the city council? And then from there, year four, your goal should be to try to actually win some coalitions and some municipal races so that you can get your ballot access, keep your ballot access, as well as build your brand in your city or state. I think that's really the biggest thing here that I definitely want to like discuss and debate as far as the goal of Project Matcha is, I think the question was about grassroots organization. It's really about building out the local infrastructure first before getting into the electoral aspect. I think that's probably the biggest thing that we have to fix as, from my perspective, the Greens, is that we need to build our infrastructure out into a long network, horizontally and vertically, before we go for different elections. So year four wins municipalities, and then year five, that's when we start contending for statewide races, whether that's a state rep or Congress. Any questions? So I apologize for the graphics not be very visible, but any questions kind of a 5-year roll of internal organization, building infrastructure, digital footprint to where then you're actually ready for municipal races over the 5 years. Yeah.
So when considering municipal races as well as statewide races, how do you identify what your local Greens are ready for?
Yeah, so I think that's a great question. I think it's a very sobering thing. So with my experience from joining DSA has shown me the scale that's needed for these races. Put in perspective, for instance, the DSA that's had a election and result. Oh, wrong. You're all set. Yeah, they had like an election review for all their wins in New York City. They had like a national call from weeks ago. So for one of their congressional districts, so congressional district has about 750,000 people. DSA chapters for every race, they need over 4,000 volunteers. Those 4,000 volunteers in a neighborhood in New York City, they door knock a few 100,000 doors while also raising over $1 million. So that kind of shows you the scale of when you're ready for a race that's like at a federal level. And then if you look at a city council and municipal at the lower level, city council usually is a few hundred volunteers. So then also you need to raise a few $100,000. So for instance, in Chicago, like an alderman race, you're looking at $100,000 to 250 makes you fairly competitive because all you really need to win is about 6,500 votes. I mean, that's a great question for our scale and when your readiness.
What does that $100,000 get spent on?
Campaign infrastructure. You're looking at campaign manager. You're looking at social media, PR. You're looking at paying your paying volunteers so that they're not unpaid interns. Looking at office space. So this is really like the physical infrastructure as well as the people infrastructure to really have manage your campaign.
No printing?
Printing as far as like flyering, yeah, that's a key part as well. Because for flyering, you're looking at handouts for your front yard, or when you're at the train stops and the bus stations and grocery stores. That is a key part of digital media and print media is a key part of that as well. Websites, Substacks, things like that.
I'll just say this, like 10 years in the party, this is the opposite of what a lot of Greens have been doing. They're like running a campaign for like 3 months from when they announced the campaign. They have like very few volunteers. They haven't done any of those checks. So this is really different. I just wanted to point that out. For like 95% of Green parties in our country are doing.
No, that means a lot because really the mindset is really to challenge us and grow together and have like hard conversations of like how do we connect with the youth? Because like that's one of the key things I've learned from working with DSA as well as working with PSL of seeing the scales that's needed. Because like when I saw going back to the New York City election race that we had in meetings, seeing the thousands of people that Claire Valdez needed in New York City or Darlita Chevalier, they needed thousands of volunteers. They needed hundreds of doors. Even for city council seats, they needed thousands of volunteers. So we need to get that scale, that critical mass. You need, to your point, you can build infrastructure out over a few years first. Then go to Scott first and then back to you, Ben.
You know, and comment on that, I think it's really legitimate to run campaigns without any real concept of, I'm gonna win this thing. Because again, what I said, you put out your campaign social media, everybody across the country in the Green Party is sharing all that stuff for free, costs nothing. And then we are building awareness that the Green Party exists and doesn't run campaigns just for 4 years. So I think there's a real legitimate side to that process. We're not saying we don't do the other, but if we don't have enough people to help, that's a really good option to keep our visibility.
Yeah, keep visibility, you agitate, you put new ideas into the marketplace. That's a great reason to continue doing the election. So that's spot on. And that also brings in new people, new volunteers, because you get to meet people in real life that can then join the party or join other coalitions.
I was gonna say the scale you're talking about for New York City, that's in a primary.
Yeah.
So like, that's way less votes than you'd be having in a general election. So it's like, we need to have that scale, but then times 10, because it's gonna be way harder in general election, than it is in a primary.
Yeah, spot on. I mean, because a congressional general election in November, I think the vote total usually for the winner is usually like 80, it's like 90 plus thousand votes. You're talking about a bigger scale to get to that level. Whereas to your point, primary, especially in New York State, it's a closed primary. There's only Democrat voters. There's about a vote total difference like 20,000 votes.
I was curious about, I love the idea of a left, like unity, left solidarity. But I am curious about when there is an issue that comes out, how do you delegate? Like, is it just all of our parties just collectively have to try to push this issue? Or is it something where, let's say DSA recognizes Democrat Party isn't gonna go over this, so they are willing to let go of it and say, all right, maybe PSL, Green, you guys take over and push this issue further so that at least some light gets shined on it? Or have you noticed some friction where they're like, no, this is our, like, baby, we want to keep pushing it even if we know it's gonna die because of the higher ups in our umbrella?
Yeah, friction that's the first meeting I had like in January of this year. So I met with like leadership from PSL and DSA about the Byron campaign of what is the Venn diagram of all three organizations? Like what does DSA care about? What does PSL care about? And what do the Greens care about? And what does that overlap? And that was what we could agree upon. Because we knew there's gonna be certain things, whether it's cultural, whether it's anti-imperialism, or whether it's how much we can push unions, there's gonna be friction and disagreement upon that because there are certain relationships every group wanted to keep. So we definitely had to have that conversation. That was one of the first conversations we had. And then from there, like as Scott can attest to, we then had Zoom calls of all parties on the call together, rallies, et cetera, to really hash it out over time. Because it's not gonna be solved in one meeting, because there's so many different people and groups over time. I mean, the conversation we had in January, PSO and DSA had no real interest in working with us. And then in July, we're having joint press conferences where Scott's on TV at the rally. So it's like, it takes time. It takes a lot of time because everyone has their own project. Well, to your point, we have to come together.
So what broke down some of those walls between at least these three? Because in my locality, I can already see in New York that the elected DSA candidates or office holders in another term, they'll be the ones holding back their left wing. In the same way the Working Family Party basically will cancel out anyone to their left.
Yeah, so that's a challenging one in New York State, New York City, because the it's still not shared.
No, just check your chat.
Okay.
Questions here.
So that's a challenging question because New York State DSA is very powerful. They have like 15,000 members.
New York City.
Sorry, New York City, yeah.
New York State DSA doesn't exist.
Yeah, New York City DSA is very powerful. Well, technically, there's no state DSA. He's correct. Yeah, so New York City DSA is 15,000 members, and they have the most elected officials all within the Democratic Party. So that they're very dancing a tightrope of not wanting to ruin those relationships. I think the key thing is that also in New York City, there's a strong DSA, what they call DSA left, that is open to third parties and open to what's called like the clean break, which is break away from the Democratic Party. So there's a lot of caucuses and members in New York City that are willing to work with third parties in like the Palestinian liberation movement, anti-Zionism, anti-war stuff against Cuba. So I've worked with a lot of those comrades as well in New York City that are based in Queens and Brooklyn. They just don't dominate the leadership in New York City. So that's part of the challenge.
Yeah, they're not really talking.
Yeah, so like we can talk after the call of like how to work together because I know some comrades over there. Sorry, go ahead. What is it? I can't see it.
So there are a few questions online. First one, again, is from Alex, asked again, I'm curious about long-term strategy. Are we interested in building community and neighborhood assemblies for grassroots participatory democracy forums? You kind of answered before, but I guess they wouldn't have a good answer this time.
Yeah, so I mean, grassroots and local thing is key. I mean, part of the backside of the presentation is really about building physical infrastructure as well. A key thing I learned in Chicago, they have what's called the IPO, like an independent political organization, which is basically like your political home, your district. So having a physical footprint in an office is key for having those connections, whether it's mutual aid, political education, and just having a meeting place is overwhelmingly key. That's a key reason why DSA and PSL in Chicago is so strong. They have multiple offices, physical building in the city of Chicago.
And the last question, I'm interested in building community and neighborhood assemblies as movement infrastructure.
Yeah, I kind of, I would refer back to the previous answer as far as having the physical infrastructure. It helps you expand the community because you only can do so much digitally. You need to actually have a footprint in your local neighborhood, so people can actually see it and actually go to for knowledge and information.
Hey, so I feel like, I'm 24 and I feel like millennials kind of moved from the countryside to cities as their progressives, but like my generation, that's not like an economically feasible model. So I feel like, there's a lot more leftists out in like rural areas now. That's why I'm from about 40 minutes off of, St. Louis. I'm wondering, like, so you're aware, are you aware of like young green candidates in like rural areas or like more suburban that's like outside the city? Because all the numbers you're saying, all the numbers that you're saying, like these monumental numbers for like urban elections, um, monumental, but like where I live, it's significantly like easier. Like I got 33% of the vote, but that's like less than 200 people. The first time I ever city council, and yeah, I'm wondering, since Gen Z, since we can't move to the city economically feasibly, are you aware of there being like, Gen Z Koreans running in rural areas where you don't need the same amount of votes? I'll give you my opinion. So,
Yeah, no, that's actually a great point because that's one of the topics I had in here as well, like rural areas, as far as that's prime for opportunity right now. So one of the biggest things I've seen for an outlet for the rural growth is like data centers. So
yeah.
so a key thing in rural areas is that the Republican Party has abandoned people in those rural neighborhoods because data centers, whether it's Meta, OpenAI, Grok, etc., they're buying a large swaths of land with all these tax breaks. And to your point, people in these neighborhoods are very upset and very angry, and they're going to these town halls and they're getting radicalized because they're seeing that the billionaires, their local Republican conference people or city council people don't care about them. So I think to your point, I think rural areas are ripe for activity, as well as a lot of red states have easier ballot access for the Greens compared to blue states. So I think to your point, that's something we could target as well as not just have a city focused strategy, but also focus in the rural areas to get people that have the economic populist ideas that are coming from these rural areas. We also saw, in addition to this, Trump closed down how many rural hospitals?
Yeah.
He defunded so many rural neighborhoods that voted for him. And he's leaving them hanging dry. So I think to your point, there's a real opportunity for the Greens to really target that and to really get a new generation of people from outside of the city metropolitan areas.
I tack on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because farmers have gotten a shout in the simple from the administration.
That's a great point. So two right here. So Scott and then
If I can speak to Illinois Green Party, I mean, I'm in Chicago, I was on TV, WGN, but the real work is happening in Madison County and Shawnee. So those two rural chapters are doing all the real work. So it's definitely happening.
Our Maryland state chapter language is on our website for the state party position on the ban, which is moratorium, by the way, it came up yesterday a couple times. What about mainstream media? We've just gotten total blackout, and my line is Vladimir Putin would be proud of the Washington Post. Because they I first ran in 2016 and I got an inch. And then when I ran for governor, I got not one print word in any media, which was shocking. And we were also blacked out, kept out of the Maryland Public Television public governor's candidate debate. So do you think that the breakthrough just comes because you're doing your thing and the media finally starts to cover it, or do you reach out, or do you try and meet with editorial boards and explain that you're actually a rational, really good option?
no, this is great. So your question and then his question is kind of like, I feel like you guys secretly saw my presentation. That's the slides about both. I slides about both of them. Yeah, so I think overall, the media aspect, being third party and being eco-socialists, we can't expect the media to cover us. So we really have to create our own infrastructure. So that starts from having our own YouTube channel, our own social media, work from content creators that are open to us, and build our own infrastructure so we get our own message out that way. That's a key thing that PSL has done. PSL is closely aligned with Breakthrough News, which is a very successful YouTube channel, which is basically a news anchor TV show that's on YouTube that basically they work side by side together, PSL and Breakthrough, where anything that's happening in PSL, it gets covered in Breakthrough News, they get automatic coverage, they get automatic social media coverage. It's a very symbiotic. Would they? Yeah, so the Breakthrough also does cover some third-party independent candidates, but they definitely have a leaning towards PSL because they have the same investors and the executive board. So that's something we definitely need to look at investing in at the national level is our own media infrastructure for for live streams, for TikToks, or Twitch, things like that to really hit every demographic. Because MSNBC, CNN, if they do cover the green, it's going to be one line and it's going to be a blurb about splitting the vote or a wasted vote.
I know you said that this might come later in the presentation, but also NPR is a good example. At least in Illinois, obviously every state is different. I will say that the local NPR in central Illinois and the East St. Louis area, since central Illinois is in that same space, they do cover us. So I wasn't, I was a previous Gen Z candidate in 2024. And they did do a story on third parties, and they wanted a perspective. So they reached out to the few Illinois Greens who they knew were running for office, even though we were rising at that point. So NPR is a good space to get some news coverage as well.
That's on the other hand, right?
Yeah, one of the things that's been working very well for us in West Virginia is that we've been really active in like mutual aid groups and putting out, like you said, that we're not just running every 4 years. And when we do our campaigns, for county, city levels, those we run to win. For state, federal stuff, we run for the recognition and to also use that as like a joint fundraising with those other mutual aid groups that we're already in, which then brings more people into the mountain party.
And since you're talking about green media, I gotta do the self promotion. So Edie and I run Green Live Stream, and it's out of Illinois, but we cover nationally. We want all candidates to come on our show. And we interview the candidates from around the country. So please come see me or Edie, and we would love to have your candidates and other people who are just involved in the Green Party to forward. Along with Kalia's Green Party Tea, we are trying to build green media.
Yeah, Edie?
Hi, and I'm asking for everyone to go to YouTube and please subscribe to Green Live Stream. I'd like to booster number, and we did interviews last night, so we covered the whole BP meeting green. Scott was in the room, had a meeting, so it was so loud, and I was in the hallway interviewing all kinds of people. He was fun.
But definitely, thank you. Very lively discussion. So let's continue. So really, your question?
Oh, I was just gonna add that like something that's helped us in Pittsburgh is that we've like built up a personal rapport with several journalists who now like kind of know to talk to us when there's something happening. Like we got Jill Stein an interview on KKA because like we knew one of the people who like worked there. And also the Green Party of England and Wales does their own like newsletters for areas that they're trying to build a base in. So that's something I think that more local green groups should consider doing.
Is that electronic newsletter or a paper drop? How
Like
do
a
they
paper
get
drop.
that? Just regular volunteers every door?
Yeah.
Yeah, so this, sorry, go ahead.
Have you, maybe this is anathema, but what about, in Maryland, we've coordinated a lot with the libertarians. We've sued the State Board of Elections 3 times with them and won, which eased up some of the stranglehold on oppressive legislation. Do you think about reaching out to them? Because we all hate the Democrats. They hate them even as much as we do. And share, even the Republicans have supported us occasionally, not formally, but we call when there's no Republican candidate, we call the local Republican Party and say, hey, we share small business, we hate centralization of power, we don't like the big military. Can you just quietly let all your people know that, we respect you and we want a lot of voices, et cetera, et cetera. And so we've gotten a good relationship going with them, but particularly with the libertarians, we're really, have you worked with them or?
I personally stay away, because my philosophy staying away from like libertarians and like right-wing organizations is that all it takes is like that one blurb in the media of like, look at the Greens, work with these right-wing factions, told you they're fascists. And I think that's really a damning thing happening, because that's happened to us recently this past year. For the ballot access for the Congress campaign, the Republicans were thinking about voting against Democrats to let Byron on the ballot, and they wanted us to court them. And we decided not to, because we're like, we don't want that headline in like WGN, which is like the Chicago local news, to say that left wings work with the right wing to stop the Democrats. And that has been like a weird, fuzzy area for us.
I just wanted to say that I did have some conversations when I ran for mayor in Bristol, Minnesota. I had some Republicans who were supporting me because as part of my policy platform, I included fiscal conservatism, but it was my own like eco-socialist brand of conservation of finances. Really in a really small community with a super small tax base, and you can see anyway. I won't go into too much detail, but that I had Republicans put signs in their yards for my campaign. Even though we would have differed on so many other things, but they cared so much about how much our tax, like the property taxes, would gone up so much. It was 16% year over year for 3 years in a row. Wow, for the city, just a city.
I think that brings up a really good point that the Green Party is really in the middle. We're a very center party, that we're conservative, like with government policies, not wasting money, conserving the environment, and working with like DSA. And that's something that I think we'll all need to emphasize a bit more instead of just we can draw votes from both sides, get everybody into the middle.
No, definitely. So great conversation, everyone. Definitely appreciate being interactive. So really looking at, like I said, like choosing where to win. So one of the comrades asked about like rural areas, I actually had that bullet point at the very bottom as far as rural America is kind of abandoned by Republicans and they're right for socialist politics. But really looking at also like the city focus of like kind of like where the young people are to the point where Gen Z millennials are moving to the city centers. City centers are right for this this project because they are filled with younger populations. There's often a larger Black and working class population in cities that are left behind by the Democratic Party. There's a lot of renters. I see some of the housing human rights T-shirt. Like renting and tenant associations and tenant unions is one of the biggest things that's happening in Chicago right now and nationwide. I mean, look at every major city. It's almost impossible to live in any city with minimum wage and get like a two-bedroom apartment. Universities are a key growing center for left-wing politics, as well as a lot of labor activity, labor unions, and the people that are union friendly, as well as there's a lot of active organizations on the left in the major city centers. We talk about the Palestinian liberation movement, anti-Zionist movement, anti-imperialism as far as Cuba, Venezuela, Iran, as well as there's a pretty dense population in these city centers that make it very easy for canvassing, door knocking, and actually getting out to meet people in real life. So really, and then last thing is the circle, full circle. The rural areas, as like as highlighted, is another great place to grow because a lot of these red states have the Greens on the ballot, and up to the comrade's point, there's a lot of there's a lower threshold to get on the ballot as well as getting votes. So the real combination, we can focus on the cities as well as rural suburban areas to really grow our numbers over the next 5 years. And this is a picture of some newspapers last few months that call this area in New York City the Commie Corridor. This is an area in Manhattan, Brooklyn, where there's a lot of younger people, a lot of people from out of town that are, I like to call them downwardly mobile PMC, where they're college educated, they make 6 figures, but they don't have the life that their parents will have. And because of that, they're very open to socialist ideals, and this is happening nationwide. So there's commie corridors popping up in every major city. Chicago, our commie corridor will be the north side. basically Lakeview, Evanston, Lincoln Park, where you have a lot of people from the Big Ten universities that got their first job, got laid off, work in tech, got laid off, but they're angry. They understand the Democrats won't save them. San Francisco, LA, DC, etc. So really, this is a great place for us to connect and reach out to people. So we're really winning Millennials and Gen Z. So this is one of my favorite pictures from 30 Rock, Steve Buscemi. Like, how do you do, fellow kids? I mean, I'm 37, telling you how to talk to the young people, so it's kind of crazy. But at the same time, really the things they care about is things we all care about, which is housing as a human right. They want fair wages. A lot of young people are working 2, 3 jobs. They have a main corporate job and they're working a side job. Myself, I'm an engineer and a DJ. I have 2 jobs. So really, we're trying to make ends meet as well as fulfill ourselves with our art. Stolen wages is a key thing in a lot of places. Wage theft. If you know anyone in the hospitality industry, bartender, waitress, a barista, these small business owners, some of them are really terrible and they don't pay people on time. They dock their pay, they take their tips. So wage theft is a huge thing that young people care about in these cities and in rural areas, as well as climate change. Chicago and the East Coast and Midwest, this had the forest fires, we could barely breathe for a full week, how bad the pollution was. So student debt cancellation. If you look at 2024, the Democratic primary or lack of primary, Kamala Harris talking about student debt cancellation, that's completely off the table. That's something that was a big thing, but the Bernie era, now student debt cancellation, then no one talked about it anymore. So these are topics that we can take control of and own as the Green Party to really get millennials and Gen Z. Because even if you're a millennial like myself, you're 30 plus years old, you're still paying student loan debt. I went to Purdue University like 2 hours from there. I'm still paying debt for my engineering degree. So my sister, she's still paying debt her degree, her biology degree. So this is still something that's really crippling a lot of us. And on top of that, it's not just young people. Your parents and grandparents took out student loans for your kids and for their kids. They're paying it back. So it's really affecting the entire family. So these are really things we can target and focus on, as well as communication methods of having our own media ecosystem, TikTok, Instagram, as what Scott said as well, sharing it and growing it. We really have to have a digital footprint and a real life footprint to really grow this movement over the next couple of years. Are there any questions? And
Not a question, but a comment. Helen says, I agree, the New York City area, a good place and chance to win.
Can I ask a question about
Yeah.
that last slide? I don't see, Reddit, Twitch, some of the others on there. Is that a deliberate focus on these areas?
No, so Reddit and Twitch are great examples as well. So Reddit, a lot of people get their politics and discussion through Reddit, the boards, as well as Twitch. People watch a lot of Twitch streamers of different politics. I mean, some of the most famous one, like Hassan Piker, he's one of the most famous left-wing Twitch streamers. Now he's like a full Democrat, so that's a separate topic. You have you have other Twitch streamers, you have other people that are really getting, because really you can use a multimedia aspect to get to people. Because for me, I'm big on Twitter, I'm big on Discord, using that for politics. Other people use Reddit, other people use Twitch, YouTube, etc. So other people use Substack, they like to read and comment.
But how do you, this in the, I guess if you built up a volunteer base, you can just handle it, but it's really tough when you've got a small campaign and you've got 8 different media options. I'm wondering, I thought Nation Builder automatically cross-posted on all of them, so you could just do one thing and it went out, but do you know of any, I mean, how do you handle that? I was lucky enough to kind of have 5 people and assign 1 to each person, but they're 8, so.
Yeah, to your point, like Nation Builder and other apps can do like the spread posts on all the apps and really use that to generate your content and to have it scheduled so that it takes a few less tasks on your already been plate. But really the key thing is like having like, you asked earlier about the $100,000 that money goes towards. Having a campaign team and having an election team, social media team, having those people either volunteer or they're part-time or those persons full-time. And that's something we really have to focus on because a lot of our message can be exponentially spread through social media and through these sites.
The other question I would have is what happens if and when we're pushed off the site? Have you been prepared for the cops?
Yeah, so being deplatformed. So I mean, we're seeing with the acquisition of TikTok by like the Ellison family, there's obviously been a big censorship of like anti-Zionist information as far as with Palestine and genocide. So the key thing of being, you don't put all your eggs in one basket, right? So all these apps and websites are obviously owned by billionaire monopolies that can easily change the algorithm. They can deplatform you, or they can throttle so that you actually you post something and it gets to no followers. We see that all the time on YouTube and Twitter, where if your topic is something they don't like, you used to get 1,000 views, now you're getting 100 views. So the mindset behind that really is having multiple footprints. So you have Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Reddit, Discord, etc., so that you can kind of rearrange the deck chairs so you're not just completely beholden to one. Good part for us, sorry.
While we're on the topic of social media, I wanted to jump in and share something about the consistency, like you were talking about. It's really important to consistently schedule posts so that way people are online at the same time they know when to expect you, as well as using like a type of brand package, so the same fonts, the same colors, so that way people recognize this is the Green Party and they're not having to identify who's posting every single time that you're coming up on their feed. You're someone that they recognize as someone that they know as as a profile.
Yeah, something that I have kind of noticed a lot is that I think that Greens tend to maybe overemphasize social media a little bit in their campaigning. And like, not to say that it's not important, because it is like obviously like a really good tool, but it's never going to compete with like going door to door with your like prospective constituents and like talking to them.
Dollar showed us that.
Yes, exactly, right? So like it's good. Social media is something that's good to have, but I don't think that it's the like thing people should be putting like you said, all their eggs in one basket towards any particular platform. It should be like a secondary means of like communicating what you're doing on the ground with stuff you're doing on the ground, like the main way to reach people.
No, spot on. I mean, real life's going to beat social media any day as far as with democracy and politics.
I found that asking people that I talk to, specifically saying, even if it's a 7-second blurb, please put my name out on your social media. And so that will realize what we used to call shoe lettering plus social media.
So continue with the digital brand aspect of it. So these are two people that have built like a big brand. One's local in Chicago, and then one, of course, this guy, the mayor of New York City. I don't know if you guys remember me yet. So really, like having a digital footprint is key, but really what the Green Party was proposing is really having like a creator strategy. So oftentimes the Democrats and Republicans work directly with content creators. That's something they don't really tell people, but when you start seeing the same messaging on all the videos, all the interviews you're seeing, they're either getting paid or they're getting a press release to report on it that day. So there could be a creator strategy of you have your local content creators in your city or your town, your state, nationwide, to post your content, whether there's a protest or a data center, whether you're doing some ranked choice voting activity, et cetera. Working with local creators is a key thing. But the creator on the left, her name is Mermaid. She's based in Chicago. She has a new series that's been going very viral locally. It's called Chicago Has an Alderman Problem, which is about our city council. And she's doing for the last 50 days, she does every single day a brand new alderman and goes through the pros and cons of that city council person. And she's been making noise in the Chicago politics scene with her content, because not only is she giving factual information, but she's a young Black woman that's doing it in like the beauty space where like her presentation is not a suit and tie, like a stodgy corporate person. So she's really connecting with people differently and really resonating. And the same thing with Zoran did as well, is that he went on the street, talked to the Trump voters to really get viral and really have unique videos. And that, again, the videos is not going to take place of the content of the substance of real life, but it's really to exponentially grow your footprint digitally so that people know you're out there. This question here.
Yep, I have a question from Helen. She says, would it be good to retain some data on Green/volunteer members connected to the union movement?
Yeah, spot on. I mean, that'd be a great place to have a union, because you want to have a database of who's volunteering, who's in your communities, who's in SEIU, who's in AFL-CIO, who's in UAW, et cetera, that is a sympathizer to the movement as well as maybe an official member. So really having strong infrastructure, a digital infrastructure, that's a key thing in having a strong campaign, a strong organization of your documents. One of the things I've learned from DSA is that they are amazing at bookkeeping. They have amazing documents and organization structure that they keep on SharePoints, they keep in Signal, as well as WhatsApp and Discord. They're very like, strong at sharing across chapters, from the Chicago chapter sharing with the New York chapter. And I think having information like that of like who's in unions, who's over to the Green Party, I think keeping that information is key for growing your data. So this goes back to what we've already touched on as far as really having a modern digital brand. It's really investing in, I think we really need to invest in like a traditional media brand for the Green Party nationwide and have it standardized and centralized. So I have the screenshot here of Edie and Scott of their green live stream. This is definitely a great test case of what the PSLs do with breakthrough news. So you go on YouTube, breakthrough news gets millions of views, hundred thousands of followers, and they don't openly say they're part of PSL, working with PSL, but they have socialist leanings of their viewership. And that's a key thing that we should replicate of having the green live stream and other types of media within our umbrella to really grow our messaging nationwide. Exactly what Scott was saying earlier, having a Green Party like traditional TV show that interviews every single candidate, local, city, and state, that can grow our numbers and grow our momentum nationwide. That is a key thing we should really discuss with the leadership as far as getting the grants, funding, et cetera, so we can really have a digital media infrastructure. So, thank you. So this is amazing. We only got to do like 10 slides and it gets a lot of great questions. So really the key thing here is coalition building. I want to give you some case studies and some examples of different coalitions we can work towards within parties.
Emily says the media with live streams and news is being developed with the left current, www.theleftcurrent.com. And Baba says, when it comes to media, what is our relationship with memes.tv?
Yeah, Memes.tv is like a left-wing socialist organization. They make videos, they make merchandise. I don't think there's any official relationship with the Green Party and Memes.tv, but they're very popular amongst like Gen Z millennials. They have amazing like t-shirts of like different socialist figures like Karl Marx, Mamdani, and like Mao Zedong. So it's a pretty cool website. Check it out.
About women.
Any socialist women? I don't remember seeing any on there. That could be with me. Put Rosa Luxemburg on there. That'd be a good one. Yeah, so coalition building, this is a key part of the presentation we're gonna get into. We have like 20 plus minutes left, so I definitely would spend some time on as far as what the Project Matcha, what's growing the infrastructure in the cities, in the states, and the rural areas. We want to grow our numbers and grow legitimacy of what we're investing in. For instance, the Illinois Green Party has been working locally with like a lot of AI data center activations. So really the key thing here is work with different groups to grow membership and to basically cross-pollinate information and share resources. So then also grow legitimacy. The biggest thing I've learned the last few years is showing up in DSL and DSA is that like, oh shit, Greens exist in Chicago? Like it's like their head exploding. And that's really broken down so many barriers. Yeah, so like it's showing up, participating is breaking down a lot of barriers. And then me getting elected to like leadership in Chicago, DSA, and also the national committees has like really opened up the conversation as far as working with third parties. So I think the key thing here is labor unions. A lot of the labor bureaucracy, unfortunately, is tied to the Democrats, but the rank and file, there's a lot of like red caucuses and a lot of labor unions that we can work with and grow and get them splintered. For instance, going back to the Byron campaign, when you're in Congress, SCIU, AFCIO, and a couple other unions immediately endorsed the Democrat, even though they historically had worked with him. So even though he's running as independent, the bureaucracy immediately circled the wagon and endorsed Democrat. And they banned a lot of their rank and file members from even canvassing and campaigning for them. Because if SCIU, for instance, says if our official endorsements for one candidate on union time, you cannot promote and campaign for another candidate. So these are kind of things that uphill battles when we work through with local unions. Yeah, I mean, it's labor bureaucracy, right? The labor bureaucracy is very strong, very tied to the Democratic Party. We're looking at Teamsters, UAW, et cetera. But we have to work through that with the rank and file. Tenant organizations. A key thing right now in Chicago is working on tenant rights and trying to fight against the landlords. It's a key thing that we can get involved in immediately, as well as disability advocacy, transit groups, expanding public transportation in your city and states. California, for instance, with the California Rail, That could be a project to jump on, as far as that's been happening for like 30+ years before me, probably, as far as them trying to get like a metro. Public school advocacy, the school board. In Chicago now, we finally have a, election for the school board. The Green Party can be involved in things like that. Mutual aid networks, as the comrade here said. So really, there's a lot of different coalitions we can join today, work together with them, and not be siloed off. Because one of the biggest things that we want to break down is these walls, and really have that Venn diagram overlap when we all work together on. I can take 2 quick questions on any ideas for coalition building.
Okay, Greens care about all these things, but there's only, limited capacity. How do you manage that? Like, you can't go to everything for everything, right? Especially in Chicago. I'm sure there's stuff happening every single day.
Yeah, so the capacity question is great because it's really like you have a democratic conversation amongst your chapter of like what should we prioritize? And really like what can we get to is realistic as well as making like a long-term plan. You got short-term goals, and okay, we do this protest this weekend, we can go to this public hearing, this public forum. But our long-term goal in Chicago is going to be ranked choice voting. So let's focus on ranked choice voting over the next 2 years. So really that democratic conversation has to happen in my opinion. So you don't stretch yourself too thin. One more question on this side, yeah.
I think one you gotta add on there is farming, or farmers coalition partnership, because they've just been treated so poorly recently by the Republicans and Democrats. And we're the Green Party, all about the environment and, healthy food, like healthy farming techniques, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So partnering with, and if we get the backing of farmers, then like I feel like the whole public would really be like, oh, farmers love the Green Party, well, we gotta love the Green Party too.
Yeah, I think it's a great question. That's a blind spot of myself. So I think what you're saying, another comrade here saying about rural areas, I think farmers and rural areas that have basically been abandoned, I think that's a key thing that the Green Party can retarget. So I'd definitely love to talk more about that. And I think DSA and PSL have been derided for abandoning Black people. And I think Republicans are being for abandoning the rural areas. So I think these are big openings we can target. So I definitely want to talk more about that and learn how to get message towards that.
Question.
Yeah.
Helen says, are there any animal rights groups?
Yes.
Yeah, there's definitely animal rights groups. So anything not mentioned on the list doesn't mean I don't think it's important. It's a matter of there's only 3 bullet points on the screen, but definitely a coalition of animal rights groups in your locality would be something that the Greens should get involved with as well, whether that's for like domesticated animals or farm animals and their care.
That's government added in the vegan, FYI. Yeah.
Yeah, one more, Scott.
Yeah, just quickly, the Lake County Greens were involved in the Richland Farms Eagle Rescue.
Yeah, so going through some coalition examples that are participating in real time. So in Chicago, there's a new project working what's called Fair Election Chicago. So Chicago is trying to be like New York City, where we actually get publicly financed campaigns. So one of the key things what led to Mamdani winning was the fact that his campaign was publicly financed. New York City has campaign matching funds. So even though Andrew Cuomo was the establishment pick by the Democrats that raised, I think, like $20-30 million, Mamdani's able to raise small dollar donations and get New York City to match up to 8 times for every dollar he raised. So Chicago's trying to get that as well, so we can get more left-wing candidates that are nonpartisan to run locally and then expand that from the city of Chicago to the state of Illinois. The second thing we're working on right now is the PRO Act. So it's Protect the Renters Ordinance. It's basically like tenant union organizing, basically allowing to get rid of junk fees, basically having where all you have to pay for a new apartment is the first month deposit, not first month, last month, security check, credit check, all this stuff. And basically allowing your landlord, if they kick you out because they want to renovate and increase the rent, they have to give you 3 months and also help you find a new place. So these are things that we're actively working on today in Chicago that, yeah, so the state can actually help with that, right? They help the landlords all the time, not actually help the tenant. So these are key things that we're working towards, and Mayor Brandon Johnson is actually a big proponent for both fair election and PRO Act, because even though he's unpopular, he's actually pretty left-wing Democrat, again, quotations, pretty left-wing is this qualifiers, but these are key things we're working on. That's what AI data centers, as Scott has discussed as well. There's a lot of action in AI data centers. There's one in my neighborhood. I live in South of Chicago, which is like a Black transplant neighborhood. They snuck a data center in our backyard. They're trying to build one. They originally called it a e-gaming art arena. And then when they broke ground, they said, "Psych, is actually a data center." So So we're actually actively protesting it now and working with, FOIA requests, lawyers, et cetera, to try to get this, stopped before it gets going. Then, of course, Ice Watch. Chicago has a very large immigrant population, as far as, Mexican population, Venezuelan, Ecuadorian, et cetera. So Ice Watch has been a great, activity I participated in over the last 2 years to really meet new comrades and actually learn different parts of the city, the struggle they're going through. And this is built trust, respect, as well as camaraderie amongst us, amongst Black Chicago, Hispanic Chicago, and White Chicago, has come together to help protect our neighbors. Yeah, definitely. So we have about 10 minutes left, so I will just jump to some measuring success and some questions, right here.
I just want to remind us all, let's remember that we need to respect and trust the young people because they will also help us in this battle.
Yeah, 100%. Like we're gonna be the biggest voting block in 2028 millennials. So this is really the key here that as we become the biggest voting block, we also have to usher in the next generation, Gen Z and Gen Alpha, to make sure that there's a clear path and a separate choice, so that they don't make the same mistakes that a lot of millennials did, getting our hopes up in Obama and then hopes up in Bernie again and then Bernie again. So we work through that. Right here.
So one of the things we're doing is realizing that, that people with lower income or whose parents have lower income didn't get automatically registered, at 16 when they got their driver's license. So when you're out there, you're gonna find 21 and 22-year-olds who still aren't registered. So we'll register them on our cell phones with them. And as long as they've got, some sort of state ID, a non-driver ID, and so we're prepared on ourselves, you understand the state website and get them registered. And, I don't pressure them to choose green, for the party, but I make it real clear that we're green helping them. And so, that kind of turns people on sometimes.
No, perfect. So yeah, so definitely will, as we wrap up here, thank you guys for all the questions. It's been a very lively discussion. So really looking at measure success of Project Matcha over the next 5 years, looking at numbers, metrics of volunteers, recurring donors, the growth of your chapter, the growth of your chapter membership dues, as well as your coalition partners who reached out immediately to the Green Party. So for instance, a little inside baseball, we have like a signal chat of all the left groups in Chicago. And now we're actively getting invited to plan forums, plan protests. And before it wasn't happening. It was the DSA is isolated, DSL is isolated. Now we're all working together, all of leadership. And now we're constantly in communication of like, how can we help each other grow over the next few months, the next few years? That's where we have to strengthen our coalition together. I'll leave it for the next few questions as far as, yeah, go, yeah. No, everyone will get the presentation slides, no problem. Yeah, so we have a constant chat that we text in daily, and then we have meetings. We have another one that's coming Sunday. So we have meetings probably like once a month formally with all 3 groups. You have in-person meetings, Zoom calls, as well as events for our general body membership as well. Chicago DSA, Illinois Green Party, and DSL. Yeah.
And one call.
Or the leadership.
Is there like a representative, like one representative, 2 representatives, like the leadership, like you said?
Yeah, so we've had like the co-chair of DSA, we've had the campaign management team from DSO, and we have myself from like Illinois Green Party, just like all helping together. I wear 2 hats. I'm in DSA and the Green Party, so like I get approval from Scott as far as what can't say and things I can share, like that. Yes, question right here.
I just wanted to hear a little bit more about the Chicago or Cook County Green Party, or are you talking about the Illinois Green Party? Like, I'm wondering those metrics that you're talking about, like where is your Green Party at? Just so we can get a sense of like what kind of people you're working with, that sort of where you're at.
Yeah, so I don't have that information today to share. So this is really about measuring success for 5 years from now. So these are really questions to ask as far as if we follow these plans, these ideas laid out here today, what do we look like 5 years from now? Like how do we measure short-term success and long-term success? And this kind of thing I'm thinking about because shortly it's really about like, for instance, canvassing. I think back to the DSA call I had a few weeks ago when they went through after all the New York City wins and the campaign managers were on that team showing how they won Claire Valdez's seat. And I see 4,000 volunteers, raised $2 million, knocked 100,000 doors over 6 months. My head's exploding like, how do they do this? Like, and we're asking questions real time. So that's kind of how we want to measure ourselves as well.
I'm just double checking. Did you say you're gonna share this presentation?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome, because it's been so great and we didn't get through all the slides, so I just.
Oh, no problem. Yeah, definitely. So, so as we have a few minutes left, I want to ask questions. So I'll definitely pass it to the crowd. As far as what are young people moved by? Gen Z, millennials. What do they care about the most in your areas? What are they most affected by? What is a practical step that your chapter can take within the next 90 days? And then the last question is like, what does a sustainable green part of the chapter look like in the next 5 years? So definitely show of hands, we do popcorn bounce around. Yeah.
I'd like to skip to the last question because I just want to encourage everyone to think about what this looks like. When you talk about growing all the metrics and, you know, having thousands of volunteers, when you're starting from that year one that you talked about with like a dozen volunteers, you can't just grow from a dozen to 1,000 and only have the same 10 people being the leaders. So that's something that our party in Pittsburgh has struggled with a lot was we have very involved leaders and we have like maybe a dozen of us who are really involved and then burn ourselves out as we grew because how do you get over that next hump of growth where you maybe do have close to 1,000 people you're reaching out to, but you only have 10 people managing them. So how do you train the next level of leaders to keep growing?
Yeah, so you can't see visibly on the timeline slide is the blue, but year 2 had like leadership development. And leadership development is a key part of this because you need to backfill positions. Because life happens, right? A lot of us are volunteers. So you might move, might have kids, might get married. So you want to be able to train people, share the information, have like in a SharePoint, have files so that they can actually get your knowledge without you. But to your point, a lot of chapters and organizations die out because that one superstar either gets burned out, moves, or just falls back. And that chapter falls apart. That one person is doing all the heavy lifting.
Yeah.
So you want to democratically spread that information, spread the knowledge, so we can share and train people over time.
Right. So yeah, my answer to the last question would be we have a large pool of leaders that are trained and who we can share knowledge with. That's what it will look like in 5 years.
Okay, perfect. That's a great question. Great answer. Yes.
So, a couple of the elder folks in the coordinating committee in Minnesota, recently aged out. Well, I call it aging out. They were termed out. So what I did, and they've been long time greens, I'm talking 30, 40 years green, right? And so what I asked them to do, they're not in the leadership, but I asked, can you come up with a training for this new young generation of, we just elected 3 new coordinating committee members, and they're like younger and like, I don't have the institutional, like generational knowledge to like train them in. I actually wasn't trained in, and I'm chair. So, yeah.
Over here. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I don't want to move too far away from these questions.
No worries.
But as far as the green chapter that you're involved in, how often are you guys meeting and what are you working on actively?
Yeah, no, I was just gonna, I would say, what was said in terms of holding out and people, having new people. Our most dynamic chapter is Madison County and they are brand new. And it also is the fact that it was the data center issue, that kind of made that all happen. So at the same time, they were worried, concerned with the data center right in their area, the chapter has now grown and become an active, our most active chapter. So I think it's kind of a combination. And certainly as, one of the leaders of the Illinois Green Party, we are always on the lookout. We want folks to be active so they become coordinator. And then at some point, as a coordinator, they become officers. So it's a dynamic process, but it's really focused on seeing where the activities are across the, the state that could build chapters.
Yeah, so data center is a big thing we're gonna, and we meet Thursday. So I've been like I've been like a ranger, like hunting. I need to come back to the chapter and go and do more stuff locally, but that's a key thing that they're working on is like data center protests and activities locally in Illinois. Yeah, every Thursday.
What is they? Is it the Illinois Green Party? Is it Chicago? Is it Cook County? What is the they?
Illinois Green Party.
Okay. Because we're talking about Chicago this whole time, right?
Well, Chicago's one of the templates, yeah.
Okay.
So and I live in Chicago.
Okay.
But it is the Illinois.
Okay.
And we have a Chicagoland chapter that's pretty active, but I said a lot of the activity goes around across the state. But my connection with the is Chicago.
Okay.
Very good.
So, what is your suggestion to do about, and this is something that the West Virginia Green Party had to go through, is when you have this large group of younger people who are extremely motivated, want to get involved, but there is that older guard that's more, they just kind of want to keep going as they have been, even if it's been killing the party.
Yeah, so that's just like, democracy in your bylaws. Like, how can you have, any amendments to change leadership as well as keep the young people interested and motivated with like a working group? You probably can create some kind of like a smaller caucus where they can all have their own autonomy, where they don't get discouraged by an old head sitting in their way, right? So it's really like you want to keep them active and maybe look at your bylaws as far as maybe new elections, maybe new amendments to actually change the leadership, their executive council, things like that. So it could be just an aggressive, contentious way to get them out the way, or you can keep them motivated where like you can have dual, like parallel growth for them.
I just wanted to make a quick comment here because I noticed that a lot of the presentation did give the idea that it was based on the city model of Chicago and then we had parking back that it's Illinois Greens, but there should be an emphasis on focus on local issues, focus on like the politics of your local community. Like I'm in Tinley Park, so a lot of the city issues aren't gonna apply to people in my area, but there's like this major road that's been under construction for 3 years. That is something that I can easily think like if these bougie people in middle class America were willing to like look at it and be like, you know what, as a matter of fact, it is ridiculous that we've had 3 years of this same major road ripped out and nothing done. Like that's a local issue that we could build off of. So just always try to keep in mind like you have to focus on your local area and what would like rile people up and pull them in.
Yeah, we could probably try to think maybe two more questions or some answers about the breakout here, or any other topics you want to talk about.
No, I'm worried
Oh,
about the
sorry.
hand that I.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Helen says perhaps create a local chapter constitution with a procedure for formalizing membership caps of each branch's membership before a new branch is created. That way you grow both leadership and membership. That was the question.
That's a great solution. We had another hand right here.
For the first bullet point, I think young people are moved by simplicity in politics and simplicity in what we're all trying to do and build for this country. And I think just action steps. And instead of, I think our generation has really just seen everyone talking about all this kind of stuff. And we just gotta do it. So if you're worried about like, oh, leadership, oh, and like, oh, I don't know if I can, just do it. Do it.
I have Scott for, I think, 2 questions, about like, what do you do when our old heads, especially with respect, like, isn't willing to let go of something, or it's perceived to be that way? Because I think, like, what I've noticed is an interest and a want to move very highly dedicated young people into leaderships of like places of power, of positions of power, like leadership roles, but that training has not been there. I would say, as you make your constitutions and make your training programs, be pretty insistent that they do what we here in Illinois call like an internship program. So yeah, so every co-chair position, every position of like a leadership, co-chair, for example, has an intern. May not want to call it intern, but whatever. That person is typically the next one in line, so they can actually learn the position for an entire year before they then are like request to be the full chair. And
Like a
right,
deputy.
like a deputy, a mentee, great terms for that. That's not intern, then you're not student, like you're not a student anymore. But that actually, I think that helps 2 things. One, it gives you institutional knowledge. So now there's a directed person, you know, be here for like 2 or 3 years, that can meet your friend, that does the graphics, that you're the point of connection for everything. Everyone happens to you. So this is you actively introducing the next people in line, next people in line, to the folks that help you in your group out. The second thing though to that is that you can't just leave. So something that I also realized is when I'm done, I'm done. Like I have a kid, I retired, I'm moving to a whole other country with a whole other time zone. Like those are all things that happen and have happened and I'm sorry to her. So like if you know you're leaving, like if you're leaving, you typically know that 3 months in advance, 6 months in advance, maybe even a year in advance, maybe you're connected, or you and your partner are kind of, you know, you had 9 months to figure it out. So that, but then they just leave, like that's gone. They don't answer the text, they can't do anything. There needs to be that pass off and that availability because if the person who was working with you only works with you but doesn't know me and that connection that you built didn't work, I need you to answer your phone calls so that way you can get that person to do it. You know, like we still need your input. And so I think that's a way to help the old heads not feel like they're being kicked out. But when they're ready to go, they just kind of kick out and leave. Like with a lot of respect.
In my bag.
Personally, as a.
No, Scott, sorry.
He's behind me.
I am the old guard in Virginia. And the World Scout data centers. And my goal in that my state party needs to reboot. I got really burnt out over the years. And the only reason I'm the old guard that's doing this because no one else, I'm the only one who can. I didn't consider myself the only great organizer, but I'm the one who's doing it. And then over the next year, my goal is to get the state party back next meeting again and to find a successor who can be elected in a real democratic process. Elected in a real democratic process so we can better organize the main and other officers who are of a similar quality. And then because I'm moving to Kentucky, I can't do this anyway.
You have any social media we can all follow because we can maybe just be sharing or something organically help you get them like bring the algorithm essentially in your area.
We got Twitter and a Facebook and Instagram account.
All right.
Okay, so there's a summary slide at the very end, TLDR. If you want to stand through all 17 slides, this is the last slide.
Too long, didn't read.
Thank you. Yeah, so really like the overview is kind of summarizing is this is now a time of break, won't be respectful. So we're gonna get water, coffee, use a bio break, use some food. Issue-based organizing is to emphasize topics that the young people care about, that Millennials and Gen Z cares about, as far as labor rights, healthcare, climate policy, housing. Really grow your local chapter, as we just talked about, as far as like building out that leadership base, that middle layer, that base layer of like your new people that join there, very energetic, and train them to be leaders because you need cycles of people coming through your chapter in the next 5 years. Looking at volunteer-centered structure. How do you get these volunteers from coalitions come in and help you from the Palestinian movement, from the anti-imperialist movement, from the anti-war movement? So really how do you get these people connected? A key thing too that I really want to emphasize that I sprinkled throughout the entire presentation is political education. Really having a consistent political ideology in your chapter, locally, statewide, and nationally is going to be key for us because as you're seeing the struggles with like the Democratic Party, they're politically incoherent. You have some Democrats that are pro-war, Zionists, that are fiscally conservative. You have left-wing Democrats like Darlita Chevalier that's just a communist. So that the political incoherence is going to be one of their weaknesses, and us being politically coherent will be one of our strengths. So having reading sessions and book clubs, whether you're reading the newest theory on eco-socialism, on feminism, on Black radicalism, on Palestinian liberation, really educating yourselves in your chapters will be key for us because having these tough discussions of what do we believe in can make it more coherent and more streamlined. And then last thing is consistent presence. I think that's what the model a lot of people said. One of the comrades here said that as far as being in real life is going to beat social media. So really being consistent over the next few years in your chapter, in your neighborhood is really going to help us grow overall. So thank you everyone for your time. Like I said, really summary, it's going to be built through years, trust, and a lot of hard work. So definitely, I love all the feedback and questions you guys provided. Definitely, I'll still be here. This is now time for break. So get some coffee, get some water, shake some hands, get some babies, politics. And those kind of things, so that's making like.
We also